So I am with Jonathan L. Bowen or Bowen? Bowen.
Bo- yes,
Bowen?
Bowen.
Bowen. So I'm with Jonathan L. Bowen, the filmmaker, writer behind the comic shop. Pleasure to meet you, Jonathan.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, thank you because I'm in my early 50s. This movie was a great reminder of a period of maybe several years when I was living in Culver City, California, and the local comic shop was a huge part of my life. Jonathan, is this a personal story for you as well? Because it's a very well etched story. And I feel, unless you maybe researched it heavily, it has to be a personal project. Am I wrong on this?
No, it's definitely a personal project. It was kind of the same for me when, well, at least when I was growing up in Portland, Oregon. I went to comic shops all the time. I would probably get my mom to go maybe two, three times a week if I could, but at least once. And so, yeah, it was based on a sort of a real life guy, Mike, who ran a comic store that I went to. And, we kind of got close a bit over the years. And I helped him out at like a local convention. And, so there were little inspirations like that, until one day he closed shop. And, I remember it was very sad. There were other stores, but it's like, that's your store.
Wow. That is very tough. And so when you were writing the screenplay, were you reflecting back on that? I don't know how long it was ago, and what was it like bringing back some of your own life, but then also layering it with the fictional narrative? Did you do extra research for the story?
Yeah, so that is actually all how it started. Is I guess I was kind of thinking like about the adult perspective versus like a kid perspective, and thinking how at the time I thought that he had the coolest job in the world. Was gets to run a comic store, but then I'm running my own small business, and I know what goes with that is a lot of hard work and a lot of headaches, and it's not the passionate fun that you would think that it might be sometimes. So then I was sort of layering this character with my own experience being, closer to middle age and having not directed a movie for a long time, kind of wondering if I'd get that chance again. And that's kind of what made me think, well, maybe maybe his passion was something else. Maybe it wasn't the comic shop, but actually illustrating. Maybe, maybe he wanted to be an illustrator. So I kind of made this fictionalized narrative, and then I guess the one way I looked at it is to give Mike the happy ending that like the real life Mike didn't get in a way.
Right. I think it's one of these things where when you're younger, you're thinking, oh, Mike is really cool. He has a comic shop. He lives in the shop. He day drinks. His coworker is really beautiful and charming and a geek like he is. Everything's cool. But then you get to our age when we kind of realize that's sort of maybe a mirage. It's only good for a little bit of a small window, possibly. I
Right.
mean, yeah. How did you see
Yeah.
that element of your story?
Yeah, and that was kind of the thing is that the real life Mike did start day drinking, and he used to be at the store every day. It was just him. And then all of a sudden you'd show up and he wouldn't be there. There would just be another employee. And I would ask like, "Oh, what happened to Mike?" And usually they said, "Oh, he's not in today. He'll be in tomorrow." Until eventually, I don't know if the employees got annoyed at it or something, but one of them threw him under the bus and said, "Well, he's across the strip mall, drinking." And I was like, because when you're 12, you don't really fully get that, but you do know if it's 3 p.m. and somebody's across the street drinking. I don't know, something might not be quite right when it's happening all the time, right?
Right. So, look, we're talking comics a little bit. We can get to the indie element of your film, indie comics and indie filmmaking in a second, but can you also talk about the universal aspect of following your dreams, no matter what? When did you realize that whether it's plan A or plan B, that you always wanted to hit for plan A, no matter what kind of odds were thrown against you? Maybe, I don't know how your first film did. Is there some kind of growth that went from your first film to your second film right now, as far as really going for your plan A and really going for your dreams?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I took a big, swing on the first movie, and then it just, we just didn't land. It just was hard to get the movie to like get me where I wanted to go. But I do know that I think that if you have a real passion for something, then you're not really even doing it because you want to. It's like you feel you have to. Like it's part of your soul. And so I think for me, being able to direct another movie is kind of, my like, look, I'm still going to go for this, even though the odds, are against you, I think, whenever you make an indie film. But you hope that you can find that audience. And, you know, I didn't want to be sitting there maybe when I'm like 75 wondering what would have happened if I gave it another chance. I'd rather just take the chance and say, well, I did everything I could anyway.
So I looked at her Instagram. Tristan Mays was saying, "Oh, 3 years later, it's finally coming out," and she's very excited. I'm one of the watchers. I'm excited. I enjoyed your film. What am I not getting within those 3 years? What is like a peek behind the curtain? What is something that moviegoers like me do not understand about indie filmmakers like you who are really doing so many jobs?
Yeah, I mean, I know I thought that was actually a little funny to be honest too, because I got that a bit from some of the cast, almost like you get a call every couple months and what's going on, why is this thing not done? But so we finished filming the end of 2022, like just before Christmas. And then, we headed into like the rough assembly and kind of put together this real rough edit. And then we spent months and months polishing this thing, just bringing it together and getting what we call picture lock. And picture lock means there might be like audio's not done or anything like that, no graphics, but you're not going to make the movie shorter or longer at that point in time. And then we did kind of stall out because then it was like we had to do these effects work, and on our budget it was kind of like, who's going to do this, and we got to make a whole list of all the stuff. And you'd laugh because you'll see the movie and think, well, there's not that many effects, I don't get it. There's actually quite a few effects, it's just that hopefully you don't even notice. But there's little removals of graphics on computer screens or additions of graphics that weren't there on set. And those are tough too, because look, it would have been a lot easier if they were just ready there on set. But sometimes when you're in a hurry to get everything ready, you just say, just leave the laptop screen black. We'll add it in later. It's not the best way to do things. The whole fix it in post is going to take you about 10 times longer than getting it right on set. But realities of indie filmmaking. So then we finished the movie. I think it was basically last February 22 or something like that. And then we had to go like, what's going to be the poster? Who's going to do the trailer? And those were big things for me because I think you have to give yourself the maximum chance to succeed when you're like a smaller movie. So I didn't want to cheap out on the poster or the trailer. I wanted, to get real seasoned pros to do them both. And then you just start going the festival circuit, like submit to all these different festivals. And if you get rejected, it kind of resets the timeline a bit. So it's a slow process to get from, filming all the way to release is really slow.
So I really enjoyed your movie. I'm clueless. How did it do in the fest? Because I'm assuming this is a no-brainer. But again, I'm a wide-eyed person, and what's the reality behind that?
Yeah, the reality behind that is like, I mean, I don't want to like have any bitterness here, but you just basically feels like you can't get into the major festivals unless you have A-list talent. And even if you, I mean, I thought Jesse Metcalfe, Tristan Mays, some good cameos would put us in okay position, but it didn't really seem to. Like most of the time, it was, oh, here's some studio movies. I mean, look at South by Southwest just last weekend. They have 3 Amazon MGM movies. And it's just becoming like, are these film festivals for independent filmmakers, or are they just corporate launch pads for Neon, A24, and all the major studios?
Yeah.
It just seems really disingenuous to me. But, we did finally get into Orlando Film Festival, which was a nice time. It wasn't particularly well attended. And then we're playing at Beverly Hills Film Festival on April 5. So I'm really excited about that because it's a really good festival and it's at the TCL Chinese Theater on Sunset. So I think it's going to be really exciting.
So maybe it's several weeks away. I don't know if you have the exact plans yet. Are any cast and crew going to go to? Can you tell our listeners about the April 5th event at TCL?
Yeah, so I'm kind of trying to make sure who is or isn't coming, but so far it looks like most people are. I think Jesse's going to be there, Tristan will be there. I'm working on Trevor Einhorn. Micah will be there, who plays Brandon in the movie, and then both of Brandon's parents, like fictional parents, will be there as well. So I think we're gonna have a great turnout, and it's open to the public, so of course, anybody's welcome to buy tickets. But I'm very excited and pretty honored, I think, because it was a long route on the festival circuit, getting rejections that are just kind of a surprise in a way. And then this one was a huge surprise too. It was actually kind of a funny little moment because I was in Cabo San Lucas just on vacation a bit, and I actually got like sick the next day. But thankfully, I wasn't sick yet. So I'm on the couch with my wife, and the movie just ended. I can't even remember what it was, something on Netflix. And she pulls up her phone. You know that how it goes. Movie ends, you guys both grab your phones. So I look up at the phone and I see the email come in. This is kind of late Friday night. And the way it was put was so weird. It was almost like we got so many entries and it was so difficult to choose. And I'm like, oh, great, another rejection notice. And then I get to like the third paragraph and it's like, however, you were accepted. And I'm like, what? Yes. So like I was so excited. And my wife's like, what's going on? Because it's so out of the blue. And I was like, I just got into Beverly Hills. So it's always an exciting moment when anybody, I don't know, honors or appreciates your work after so much effort and time has went into it.
Look, I saw your trailer for the comic shop. I enjoyed it, but then my only, not trepidation, my hesitation was I'm thinking, Jesse Metcalfe as a comic book store owner. I don't know. I like him in these action thriller type of movies. I haven't seen any of the rom-coms. I'm more of an action thriller guy. I could see him in the lead. I've seen movies of him in that kind of lead. I was fine with it. He does a
Right.
great job. He does a great job. So, can you just talk about his performance and how he actually? I mean, he convinced me. And did it? How quickly did he convince you? And how pleased were you with his performance?
Yeah. So I was very excited when he came aboard, but I hadn't seen everything he'd done. So I actually started watching like every project that he did, just so I could see like, are there any things I should watch for, any tendencies, or what am I looking at here? And as I got through the projects, I thought this guy, I was getting more excited. I was like, this guy can really act. And I loved kind of the attitude he brought. Like I don't know, he really understood Mike. And he said he put on like 15 pounds before the role. That's pretty amazing in a way too. Of course, he's still Jesse. He's a really good looking guy, but we wanted to give him at least a little bit of a rough edge. And you're right though. There is that like Hollywood eyes kind of thing where it's like uh the comic shop that we filmed at, that like the actual store, the guys said, I think it's really cool you're doing this, but let me tell you, I've never seen a girl like Alex, Tristan, or a guy like Jesse in a comic store running it or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. What can we do though? And
It's called a movie, right?
yeah, it's a movie, and it's like it really is about playing the role, and I think understanding what drives Mike or where he is in life at this point. And I thought Jesse did an amazing job of that. Like one thing that really I thought was so cool is we were in the car and I really just met him. It was the first day before filming, and he had a whole binder full of the script, and he had written notes on every line, like things that for him to remind him like how to play this scene, what the line means to him. And I thought, this is great because what if? I mean, it's a small movie. We could have had a situation where the actor accepts the money and doesn't really care. Like they just want to get it over with, do whatever they can. And that wasn't Jesse's attitude at all. Like he definitely, poured his heart and soul into the film, I think. And I hope it shows. I think it does. I think he really had a great performance. So I was excited.
Speaking of great performances, Micah, Giovanni, can you just talk about getting him and how pleased were you with his performance? And I loved the subtext or the secondary story with Brandon's relationship with Mike, his relationship with his father. It makes the comic shop a very layered narrative. Can you just talk about his
There's
performance and that other part of your narrative as well?
Yeah, I'll tell you a story that I actually really haven't told anyone. I hope that no one gets mad about this because there were ways out. So I don't want to make this sound too dramatic. But what happened is we got all these candidates for Brandon. And I told them, I said, please do not show me people who are 28, 30 years old to play a 16 or 15, 16, 17-year old in high school. It's just I've seen that in too many movies. And now so I complain all the time. So now I'm going to be a hypocrite if I do the same thing that everybody, always does. So they show me a picture of Micah, and I thought, wow, yeah, how old is he? Because he definitely looks like he could be in high school. And I said, yeah, he looks great for the part. Yeah, that was it. I sent the email, and then like all of a sudden, 2 days later, it's like, oh, Micah's on board. And I'm talking to producers like, wait, I haven't even seen a reel of, I mean, where did we find him? And they were like, wait, you didn't see the reel? Cynthia, our casting director, said that you saw it and he was great. I said, no, I said his look was great. I haven't seen anything of this kid. And so we're all like, oh boy. And so then I get the reel and I'm like, oh, this better be good. Because we basically, verbally hired him without any actual scenes that anyone's seen except the casting director. She verified. So when I saw them all, I was like, okay, he seems really good. And now it's a matter of like, does he gel with Jesse? So we did a little Zoom call and we thought they had really good chemistry as they, we just want them to talk and like kind of be the characters a bit. And, that got me pretty excited because I have to say before filming, that's what I was most nervous about. Like, what if here's our established actor who we can't afford to, pay some money to. And then here's our unknown. What if the role of Brandon, what if he just isn't good? And then your co-lead actor, the whole film would have been taken down at that point. So how good Michael was really a relief, I think, as well. Like, yeah, I was excited, but I was also relieved.
He does a great job. And was this the entire movie shot in Vegas, or is that an illusion? Can you tell us, or did you make the best out of the location? Are you trying to spotlight that whole area as well?
Yeah, we shot the whole movie in Las Vegas, and it was like I guess you describe it as almost most of it's like old Las Vegas, sort of um, a little west of the Strip, except for one location that was in North Las Vegas. But yeah, it was interesting. Like we discussed filming it in LA or something like that, somewhere else, but I live here in Vegas and the producer said, let's do it there. It'll be fun. And um I like the idea. I mean, it isn't a story that needed to be in Vegas, but then when we knew, I started integrating elements to make sure that it fit because the dad was always a military dad. We have got a big military presence here, Nellis Air Force Base and whatnot, and test site 51. No, I'm just kidding. But, things like that. And so I thought that if we, set it here, and then we have cameos like Murray Sawchuk, Murray the Magician. And I usually when the cameos get mentioned, they just say Eric Roberts and Carrot Top, which like it makes sense, but Murray's actually been on TV a lot. And one of the guys I did an interview with, it's over in the UK, and he knew who Murray was. So it was kind of funny. Murray's always on the front of the local paper for some sort of mischief that, like getting kicked out of the Magician Society or things like that. So I did kind of think, let's put some Vegasy touches in this, and then let's have a character right who comes to the store to do signings, and he doesn't really come because he's nice or just because the pay is good. He comes because he wants an excuse to visit Las Vegas. And I thought that is such a perfect thing that happens here all the time. Because when, companies schedule conferences, then it isn't just like, okay, we're doing this conference, everyone needs to show up. It's important. Yeah, that sounds kind of boring. But if you say, "Hey, we're doing our conference in Las Vegas. It's gonna be 4 days," everyone's like, "Yeah, I'm excited. Okay, let's go to that conference." And then there's a lot of drinking and gambling involved.
Jonathan, you run your own company, right? As far as directing, and I think maybe you have a staff where you send people out to do different projects as well. I'm assuming with your what's the name of your company again?
JLB Media Productions.
JLB Media Production. So, is there an advantage setting up shop in Las Vegas as opposed to the myth of, oh, if you're not in LA or if you're not in New York? Is that a fallacy? Is that a myth? And how are you able to thrive in Las Vegas? And is it thriving as one would see?
So we are actually based in Los Angeles still for the company. I go there every year for the annual meetings, and we talk on the phone like every Monday. I guess we do feel like there's some advantage to being, an LA based company. There's definitely disadvantages, but we do nationwide like corporate business to business videos. And this will sound funny, but there's actually some good reason why California is like not a bad place to call home. Because if we shoot in every state, right, then every state might say, well, you did X amount of work, so you owe us this amount of taxes. But states have tax treaties. So if I pay the highest rate, basically, in California, no other state can come after me and say, well, you owe us this, because you say, we already paid the taxes in California. Now, you could maybe, yes, you could save taxes if you basically allocated to each state and then we base the company in Nevada, but that's going to cost more in accounting fees than I would ever pay in taxes on it. We just don't make
Mm.
enough money for that to make any sense. So I do think though here in Vegas we're getting a much bigger film footprint, I guess you'd say, with Mark Wahlberg, coming here and what Sony trying to launch the studio with Warner Brothers, and I think it's really exciting. I think this would be a great place for them to film more. It's dry almost every day. It's sunny. There's space for the studios, and the cost of living here is, people would say expensive, but it's better than LA anyway.
I can imagine. And I have one of my best friends. He's moving to Las Vegas pretty soon, and he's very excited. And he's an LA resident, so I
Oh, nice. Yeah,
I'm
uh,
envious of his move. So
I think they said something like, I could be getting this wrong, but it's almost 50% of people new to Las Vegas come from California, and a huge portion of those come specifically from the LA metro area. So that is always interesting. Like, you'll see Dodger stickers all over the place, and a lot of Lakers fans and all that. So
yeah, I don't want to be such a downer, but I do remember where if a movie was good, it would be released within what 5 to 6 months on DVD or Blu-ray. Is there any chance down the line that there will be a physical media release because of the whole subject matter and all of the footage I'm sure you've accrued? It would be great to have in physical media release. I'd be one of the first people buying it, to be honest. So
it's funny you say that because I've had a number of people ask that, and it did get me thinking because I think so. This is really funny, but the industry is so different, right? Than it was just not that long ago, 10, 15 years ago. And it used to be that for like smaller movies, that's where you made all the money was DVD or Blu-ray. And now it's honestly gotten to the point where most of the time the distributor doesn't even take those rights. They literally carve it out and said, we don't care. They're yours. Do whatever you want from them. And so I think then me as a filmmaker, I could probably do something like that, but I think I would have to know first that there's like enough demand. And then maybe you do some sort of limited print run. But it's funny because I geek out in the same way. I was thinking how cool would it be to have one of the steel books, like with our poster on the cover. We already have the art. It's like that's beautiful art that's done. So I poked around looking at that. It's like, how does one go about doing a steelbook? Because I've seen some indie films sponsor to me on Instagram with steelbooks. And that got me thinking, like, okay, so yeah, I guess you must be able to do this somehow without being a major studio.
yeah, I mean you could even do merch. I'd wear the comic shop shirt and with different what is it, Techno Man? Is that
Yeah,
yeah,
I know it's funny. I was thinking that too. I was thinking that is funny. You could have like a Techno Man t-shirt or coffee mug or something like that. And those are all things where it's like, I know you shouldn't be thinking about this, but sometimes I do. I think, well, if this is some sort of little cult hit or whatever, I mean, finds its audience, then maybe we should do some basic merchandise just for fun. Like, do you remember those Vote for Pedro shirts that were everywhere with Napoleon Dynamite?
100%.
That's
100.
actually kind of how I heard about that movie. I hadn't seen it. And, it was way back in college. And I just asked somebody, I said, what is this Vote for Pedro thing? I don't get who's Pedro. And they were like, oh, you haven't seen Napoleon Dynamite? I'm like, no. Like, and so then of course I'm hearing people making all these in jokes. I'm like, well, I better go see this movie then.
Wow. Final couple questions, and thanks for your time. But the artwork in this movie, it's not Marvel, it's not DC. How did you get that?
Yeah, so basically I knew we wanted like indie comics publishers. Like we're an indie film, and that's Mike's whole thing is like the little guy against the big guy. So I reached out to a bunch of these indie publishers myself, and I, I originally kind of we thought somebody from production would do it, and then the weeks kind of passed, and I thought, I better just do this myself. We need this content. And a couple of the publishers, like I guess I'm looking at now, Atomic and what's the Antarctic Press, were nice enough to give us comics to use in it, and Dark Horse as well. I was a little fortunate there because my dad is friends with Mike Richardson, who started Dark Horse Comics. Like, and Mike was at my wedding, so he's kind of a family friend. Like, it doesn't mean he's any easier for me to reach, though. I had to bug him like so many times. I mean, he was really nice to let us use it. Don't get me wrong, but he's so busy. And so then when we had all those comics, it's like, okay, this is great. We've got a bunch of stuff we're cleared to show, but we still need to create Technoman. Like, it has to be. And there was arguments about that. Like, well, Jonathan, I mean, why can't we just use an existing character? And he said, now you're starting to talk about like the clearances you need to do something like that, and then the control that we have over it isn't there. And I said, and Technoman specifically has a superpower relevant to the plot, which is that he can teleport basically anywhere as long as there's a digital signal. Well, that's something really appealing to Brandon because he's a military brat. So he's moving around all the time. And he feels like as soon as he makes a friend, it's off to the next place. And so that's what I thought Brandon really connected with Technoman, not just the art and illustrating, but that he dreams that he could do something like that because maybe he could keep the friends that he makes.
Yeah. Jonathan, when people ask you, because you've directed two films now, when they ask you for that road advice, I want to be a filmmaker, what kind of advice in a blanket way do you give? And what is the main thing that people must understand before they embark on directing their first feature?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that people need to understand is just how difficult and saturated the marketplace is. And I think that you just need to like really, I believe you need to focus on the art and what it is you want to create. And in today's world, I would recommend not spending that much money on it just because you don't want to. I hear these people going credit card debt and all this. It's just you don't want to take that path. It's just too risky. For every one Terrifier or Blair Witch Project or Paranormal Activity, whatever, there's 1,000 movies that you've never heard of that struggle to even get distribution. So, and that's not to at all be discouraging, but it's to be strategic and to make sure that you're doing this for the right reasons. So that if at the end of the day, all you have out of it is a finished movie, that you can at least say, pat yourself on the back and say, well, I did it. I made a feature. I'm now a feature film director. And that's okay. That's a step forward. Look at Sean Baker. Like, he shot a movie entirely on an iPhone. And then stuff like Florida Project. It's a pretty low budget film with really no one in it. Until he did Anora. And well, he's on stage all night long collecting Oscars. So, it can happen. It takes that passion and that drive and discipline to stick with something for a long time and know that the world might not be there to give you applause. But
Even if your movie's good, right?
yeah, even if it's good, I mean, I've seen so many movies like that at festivals. For instance, there's a few at Orlando where, I'm sitting there watching this movie, going, so they made this thing for like $150,000, really, and this thing looks great. And there were so many movies there. I'm like, this stuff is actually better than most of what I see on streaming, which is it's a little frustrating because I know it's so star driven, right? That when you talk to friends, maybe it might be the first thing to ask you. If you say I saw this movie and they say, "Oh, who's in that one?" Like, "Oh, this one with Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie," or something like that. Um, versus if you say, "Oh, look, there's no one in it. It's this little indie film." Then all of a sudden, I feel like people are like, "Oh, okay," you know.
And what's funny is sometimes, or maybe most of the time, that indie film will have more character and verve and creative punch than not going to bite the hands that feed me or that I watch. All the other streamers that have much more expensive, higher budget films with higher tier talent, right? I'm sure you,
Yeah, it has to be. I think about this sometimes, and like every once in a while, of course, and this happens all the time. So I'm not going to single anything out, but every once in a while, I'll see a movie that they obviously spent a lot of money, like 100 million, $200 million, and it ends, and I just think, I'd give that movie a C. Like it was fine. It wasn't awful. But then I just kind of smirk and think to myself how even with $200 million, you can't guarantee that your movie is going to be any better than my movie. It does not buy you quality. If it bought you quality, they would be doing it every time. Like they say, well, we bought this. We have the great effects, and we have the A-list stars, and we have a director who's known for these other big things. That's great. Like, but all of that still doesn't guarantee a good movie, and it must be the most frustrating industry, even for the studios, because they spend this money thinking that they put all the elements in place and they should have a winner, and then it comes out and it's just okay, like it's not that good.
it's just part of the algorithm, I guess, right? And
Right.
just a couple quick ones. Have you had people within the comic book environment give you any kind of feedback on your film over the last couple of years, and what's it been like for people who know more about the comic book industry or comic book fans, like me?
Yeah, a little. It's like I stepped into this world that I guess I didn't think about as much, honestly. Like when I wrote it, I did go to comic shops and I bought a bunch more like indie books and kind of what's out there. I did a little research, but of course, like I'm not a diehard comics nerd who like actually knows all this stuff perfectly. I just know I was that person growing up, and it was really influential for me. So, some of the feedback you might get is like, well, I don't know if this is true to like today's industry. Somebody said that about the trailer. And I said, what isn't true? Like that, I mean, Mike's store is failing after the pandemic. That's absolutely true to reality. I don't know where they get this stuff. And then, the other one that's so funny is the rival store. So well, I don't know about this. There's no such thing as chain comic book stores. Oh, but there is, because actually that's the one we shot at. The actual real life comic shop is owned, the good one is owned by the System of a Down drummer. And there's about three or four that he owns. They're mostly in Southern California. And then he's got the one in Vegas. So it's just funny when you hear things where you're like, no, it's actually not true.
That
But
is so amazing. So the comic shop, where can people get this? When does it come out? It's digital and on demand first before a streaming. Tell us, our listeners, where they can find it.
right. So yeah, it's April 11, and it should be any sort of digital outlet, like I guess from Google Play and iTunes to Amazon, and wherever you prefer to rent or buy movies. And yes, that's the goal, and the deal is that you come out first. Like I know Lionsgate does this a lot. You come out for buy and rent, and then you have a streaming deal later on. We don't have a streaming deal yet, but we will. It's just a matter of like who's it going to be. And I actually kind of think this benefits us because I think that we can drive some interest in this movie, and we have our core audience. And I think they've ignored. I honestly think they ignore our core audience somewhat. They understand that superheroes and all that makes money, but when it comes to like the actual comic book fans, there's 50 million supposedly worldwide. It's a growth market. There's like a 7.8% growth rate in the US in that's digital comics and in print comics as well. So I think there was actually a lot of us. And I think that if there's that sort of interest in it, then you might get a better streaming deal than if they sit there and think, well, we'll lowball you. Just to give you an example, it was many years ago. It's probably what, 10, 11 years ago, right near the start of Netflix streaming. But they offered me $2,000 for my first movie for streaming. And I said, no, thanks. I mean, that's not a serious offer.
Hopefully, I'm sure it's better now. Hopefully by a marked difference.
Yeah,
And this movie also works, by the way. Not going to tell you how to market your movie, but it really works as a family friendship drama as well. So I think that's something that should be hammered home. It's not just about comics, or it's not just a
right.
comedy, but it's very resonant. And
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly it. Because when I said it in this world of the comic shops and all that, it was a shell. It was not supposed to be like this is what the movie's about. It's really about a guy finding his passion again. And this, I've heard sometimes people say this mentor protege relationship. Actually, no, not really. Like, I don't see it that way. I think that Mike gets as much from Brandon as Brandon gets from Mike. They each influence each other. And that's something that I wanted to emphasize as well, that we do this in our culture where, oh, well, elderly people, they have wisdom. Somebody's older than someone else. They know all these things. Not always true. Like, sometimes you can have more wisdom, but you've lost something that was an essential part of you, which is that youthful optimism, right? Like we say, oh, young people think they're invincible. But that's not always a bad thing, because that's what allows you to go out into the world and take risks, because the world hasn't hammered you down yet. So that's kind of what you see a little bit from Brandon is he doesn't failure isn't something he's thought about. He's only 16 years old. All he knows is he loves to draw. And I think seeing that youthful optimism and enthusiasm, that's what helps pull Mike out of his despair, realizing that he used to be that way too. And he's got to find it back. So I think each character grows from each other. And then, as you mentioned, the family drama. So that's something I wanted to show is how our relationships impact not just the other person, but our other relationships in life. So as Mike and Brandon become better friends, Mike's able to kind of tell Brandon like how to deal with his dad, like how to see things from his perspective of it.
that's
And
really
then
well done.
ultimately, improve their relationship. Because I liked what I liked showing is that end of the day, you think he's this tough military guy who wants to crush his son's dreams. It's not like that at all. He's just a concerned father who used to be in a band himself and it didn't work out. And so he's coming at it from a perspective of like, well, look, if you just follow your dreams, like you're not going to have a job.
And that's a valid point, right? That is a total
Right.
valid point. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. And after the comic shop, again, like I said at the beginning of this interview, it's a very personal film. So, final question is, can you recommend a movie that really strikes a personal chord for you, maybe one of your all-time favorite films? Because you put so much work into this film, I'm assuming movies are important to you. So, can you give us a recommendation of a movie that's really personal for you and why?
Boy, that's interesting. One that I saw recently that I just was thinking about is the movie I think Living in Oblivion. I can't believe I hadn't seen it, but it's an industry movie,
Yeah, Tom
and
DiCillo. Yeah.
yeah, and so it's kind of all like there was too many relatable things in that. I actually don't personally recommend it if you're a filmmaker, because it's too on the nose. Like it actually made me a little depressed because I go through all these experiences and then I'm watching this movie and he goes through all those experiences. So I thought, well, my experiences are unique at all. Every filmmaker has these experiences. But I really like the movie and I think it gives a good look in at how things are. That's that's just something recent. It's not like saying an all-time favorite. I'm a huge Star Wars geek, as you can tell from some of the stuff in the office. So
Yeah. But I remember it's been so long since I've seen Living in Oblivion. I saw it in New York in the theater, and I remember certain moments when I thought to myself, it must be really tough to be a director because it's these are funny sequences, right? But they're just so frustrating, right, to watch.
yeah, no, it is. It's so frustrating because I can see, like, I'm reading the comments and it's like, oh, this is so funny. This movie is so hilarious. And I'm thinking, like, no, this it's not funny. Like, that's actually exactly how it goes. And when you're in the moment, there's nothing funny about it. It's incredibly annoying. It reminds me of this movie, also not a good movie, not a recommendation, but that Good Luck Chuck film. I think it's like 8% on Rotten Tomatoes. So let's be honest, that's
Right.
a good film. But in that movie, people would say, "Have you seen this movie? It's so funny." The guy, like every girl that he's with, they end up marrying the next guy. Well, I had four girls in a row before I was married who I was the last guy they kissed, and then I heard like 6 months later that, oh, she's engaged to this guy, and I'm thinking, did she meet him like 2 days after we went on? It was so weird. And so it kept happening to me. And then I thought that movie's not funny. It's like somebody made a life story about me and I didn't get a penny from it.
Well, the very last question is double question is when are you going to do your own script of that story? Because that's an amazing story. And then that perseverance to finally meet and your wife right now is perseverance a huge part of who you are? Because I mean, after the first one, I would have been down for the count emotionally, and I would have been in hibernation to this day. So is perseverance a big part of who you are? I guess that's my last
Yeah,
question.
I definitely think so. I mean, I think in life, like you have to just keep on, you have to keep trying, keep putting yourself out there. And that's the biggest thing I would say is like filmmaking is about failure a lot as well. I mean, I've learned a lot from my failures. And so maybe that would be another recommendation for young filmmakers is fail early and fail often, get it out of the way. We all make short films that suck. There's no shame in that whatsoever because you learn. Like I guarantee you learn more on those failures than you ever learn on a movie that does really well. Like you make a short, and I had my one of my first like pro shorts. I think it went to 18 film festivals. They all really liked it. I think it had some significant issues, honestly. Like there was some sort of like, I don't know, student filmmaker sort of stuff in there, like character waking up to an alarm and cliched stuff. And it like to start the movie. But I had another short that I was proud of and it went absolutely nowhere. And I learned a lot on that short, like what what works and what doesn't. So I hate to say it, but sometimes the failure is going to make you better.
Yeah. Jonathan, really love, honestly, really love the film. Good luck with the comic shop and looking forward to actually interviewing you very, very soon for your next film, possibly.
Yeah, well, I hope so. Thank you so much. And that's the deal. Like if Comic Shop's successful, hopefully, like Mike, I get another chance. So I'm now looking to become Mike in the movie.
As long as there's no day drinking, okay? People
No,
our age, it's not good for us anymore. That occasional
too old for
aperitif.
that.
Yeah, too old for that as well. Thank you so much, Jonathan. You take care.
Thank you. Have a
Okay.
great
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. For more movie and television reviews and interviews, please subscribe to my Deepest Dream channel. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And as always, thanks so much for your support. Take care.